And then we have the latest, and I think what looks to be the final chapter of this Lacey Evans story. And man, they've all been pretty tough, but like this one might have been some of the most tragic stuff that's happened to her in a short amount of time, because she talks about her she's about to debut basically, and she talks about how her father overdosed 2 months before her WWE tryout, and then she had a family member attempt suicide, with Lacey being the one to find them as they apologized, and she tried to help stop the bleeding. When she was about to have her first NXT match, another family member OD'd near the location of where the match was taking place in Florida. And this is when she decided to do what's best for her and her own mental health. And instead of feeling excited for her first match, instead of feeling, my notes are all over the place here, unfortunately. But basically, instead of like tending to the family member, or at least like taking her mind off of her match, she decided to stay, and she had her first match in front of her child before dealing with the inevitable in the hospital. She talked about how she's been put in terrible situations, but now it's her time. She wants to show both of her daughters the power they have to break the cycle. And she says there's nothing WWE superstars can do to her that she hasn't already overcome. She's going to be a SmackDown Women's Champion. Kate, I believe like when these segments started, I was doing the show with you and we gave
Mm-hmm.
our impressions. I think the
Mm-hmm.
audience that's listening to these shows know my feelings towards them. But what are your thoughts on them since then, in particular this one?
Oh boy. um, First of all, credit to her being able to do this, um, and talk about the things that she's done in a climate that still is very suspicious of things like addiction, and where people are still encouraged to keep that thing quiet. I think it is obvious. It's very brave. It's looks to be somewhat of a cathartic process for her. So I respect her for that. The issue that I've had with these promos, and we talked about this, is that to me there is an element of artificiality that can make her incredible sincerity somehow seem insincere. And for me, a lot of that came from being suspicious of the motives of the company doing it. And look, I can fully acknowledge that a lot of that was based on my, just the past, not like, and for all I knew in the previous segments, they were very committed to getting this sort of story across and presenting it in a way that could be helpful and instructive and inspiring for people. Every single one of my suspicions about the company, I feel completely justified about them right now. It is in the United States National Mental Health Month. In Canada, it's National Mental Health Week. I have not in years ever seen a segment on television that discussed addiction and suicide without providing some kind of link, some kind of bulletin to allow people to get help. What the hell were they thinking? It is the easiest thing to do. It is the one tiny thing that they could have done, and it would have meant nothing to them in terms of their production costs. That information is widely available, and it is always circulated on television when these sorts of issues are discussed. This wiped this out for me. I don't think that there was anything sincere in the company's dedication to talking about these issues. I don't doubt her dedication or her pain or the sincerity of what she said at all. Shame on them for turning this into essentially emotional pornography.
Hmm. It's very strong words, and I I don't disagree with any of it, because in the end, I think what they had was a very talented wrestler and a very good promo who, in her
Mm-hmm.
prior incarnation, for whatever reason, was not did not make her the star that I think they wanted. And I think they realized, well, this person's real story is actually really good. Can we use that? And I think that's exactly what you're seeing. I don't think there's really any much thought beyond put into these segments beyond how do we get Lacey Evans over? How do we, you know, uh, put what sparked her for us hiring her in the first place to an audience. And it was, I don't even have an issue with that, but I feel like the presentation of it for me like lacked any sort of tact, because it was
Mhm.
just her coming out like in front of a green screen telling the story with an American flag green screen and music to just emphasize it in the background, and all
Yeah.
the things that you mentioned, Kate. I don't think are any sort of their concern. The only concern that they
Mhm.
have is whether or not Lacey Evans is over. And looking
And
at the
this is
result, well, I was going to ask you, looking at the result as she comes out here at the end here, what do you think? What do you think
it.
beyond
It did
that?
not strike me as the kind of result I would have expected it to be bigger than it was. Just looking, I mean, there's a certain. I felt I wasn't there. Obviously, it sounded to me like a lot of the noise was piped in, and looking at the reaction in the audience, I didn't necessarily get the feeling that it was connecting. I could be wrong. I know a lot of people have been very impressed with these segments. But again, for me, it comes apart with the failure to do absolutely the most basic thing that they could have done, having, you know, having aired these segments week after week and talking about these incredibly painful issues.
Yeah, just to maybe get a bit more into sort of like the detail of the actual introduction here, because at the end we have ring announcer Samantha Irvin introducing Lacey Evans to come out live. An incredibly odd line I felt in this introduction was when Samantha Irvin says, Lacey has asked the audience to show the proper respect, so please applaud and welcome. That was super strange. Why?
Yeah,
Like
because
they would
that
have
felt
applauded.
almost heelish.
They would have applauded anyway.
Yeah,
Why would she prompt the audience to clap for her upon her entrance?
yeah.
So,
Like,
I,
even if you were sort of asking that first of all, like, I don't know what the proper response is to someone who has just told you this harrowing story of abuse and addiction and violence in her past. Like, what's the proper response? I don't, like, standing up and clapping doesn't strike me as proper. Um,
I,
maybe if
I
she was
think it was,
referencing her military background, then I would get it. But
but it was
I
like
still, if
sort of
I'm
a
sitting there, I don't know what the proper response is.
well, it was a persevering type of promo, like the way she ends all of them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like the type of reaction I think they were expecting for somebody to, like you see their story, and I guess you want to applaud them for overcoming it. I just didn't think it was something that needed prompting. Certainly not from Lacey
Yeah,
Evans herself.
no, and I think that if they felt that they needed to prompt the audience to get up, it's a sign that they don't think that they have done enough to make the audience get up on their own.
So Lacey Evans comes out, yeah, as Kate mentioned, gets I would say a good reaction for what looked to be a good
Mm-hmm.
reaction on paper. It's very tough to tell with these crowds these days. And she celebrates with some people at the top of the entrance, and that's sort of it. So I think she will continue to get good responses, just because
Mm-hmm.
it's just the nature of I think like um, I mean, she's had a terrible story, and I think most people aren't focusing on things like the production, nor like how much they're actually caring about at promoting mental health awareness, and instead are just thinking, well, do I like this person now? And I would say probably the most usual answer is yes, but there are just some really weird production things that just I think make it a bit more difficult than it is, and
Mm-hmm.
um
And yeah, I think that when I say, I should clarify, I didn't mean that I thought she got a bad reaction at all. I thought it was good for the amount of emotion that she put into this. I would have expected it to bring the house down.
hmm. Thank you so much for some of your thoughts on those, especially like I mean it
It's an
sounded like
issue for me.
yeah, no, it sounded like it was very difficult for you to mention, and I think that therefore that much more important to hear it from somebody who's so passionate about it. So thanks for that.